Thank you for listening to the Following Films podcast. Today I'm joined by Jane Badler. I had Jane on the show to talk about her latest film, Trim Season. In the film, Emma, an adrift, jobless 20-something, is seeking purpose. Along with a group of young people from Los Angeles, she dries up the coast to make a quick cash trimming marijuana on a secluded farm in Northern California. Cut off from the rest of the world, they soon realize that Mona, the seemingly amiable owner of the estate, is harboring secrets darker than any of them could imagine. It becomes a race against time as Emma and her friends try to escape the dense woods with their lives. Trim Season will be in theaters and on demand on June 7th. Hope you enjoyed the show. Thanks. How are you today, Jane?
I'm really, really good.
Awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I really appreciate it. I was really surprised with how much I enjoyed this film. Just batshit crazy. And I just love what you did with this. And I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about how this, because this is one of you produced this, how this project came to you.
One of the producers, Shawnee Lamott, who's one of the producers on the show, him and I had worked together on a film called Free Fall.
Mm-hmm.
And he sent me the script and he said, I really think that this role would be incredible for you. And I read it and I was so excited. I thought, we've got to do this. We've got to get this film made. And we did. It took us 3 years to get it made. It was, it didn't happen overnight. And the original script by David Blair, which was based on a documentary called Magic Mountain about people that went up into the mountains of Northern California to trim the marijuana butt, and they disappeared.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was based on that, and it was a very strong script. But once we got our director, Ariel Vida, who we were all very excited about her, based on her first film. We thought she's the perfect, because we wanted it to have a bit of an art house feel.
Yeah.
And once we got her on board, we all realized that the script needed a lot of work. So, we went to work, all of us, we sat down, mostly Ariel and I, for about 8 months. We just chipped away at all the characters and tried to find backstories and relationships, because often in horror films, that's overlooked. And that was really important to us. And when it was in a good enough shape, she went back and wrote it, brought in other writers. And then we had to raise the money, and then we had to find where we were going to shoot it. I mean, this is the normal way things go. And there we were, during COVID was our opportunity in the middle of COVID to shoot it in the mountains of Utah. And I was in Australia. I couldn't get out of Australia. They had all these rules and regulations that you couldn't leave the country.
Right.
I had to get special permission and had to quarantine, and oh my God. But anyway, I made it. We did it. And here we are.
And I'm glad that you brought up the art house feel, because that was something that just grabbed me right away. This did not look like a typical kind of smaller budget indie horror film. This is definitely punching above its weight class, where there's something that is very intentional and thoughtful in the design and execution of this film.
We're very lucky. Ariel is not only a wonderful director, but she's one of the top production designers.
Yeah, she's great.
That's where she comes from. So when she came on, she didn't just direct, she also did production design. And she made things. She worked well into the night. She was on all the location scouts. I mean, even down to, the tree in that little pyramid, the blood tree.
Yeah.
She made that. She was, that the feel of that film was so important to her. The feel of the woods, all the way that the cinematographer shot the woods. We had an extraordinary cinematographer. And I'm just really happy that it had that sort of art house feel. I always wanted that with it.
Well, it's, when I'm watching the movie, you start thinking of comparisons and things that just kind of click in your mind. And, I'm watching the opening of this and I'm like, oh, this is somebody who clearly likes Terrence Malick, and it's that those are not the normal pulls that you get and your introduction in this, I was like, oh, this is the Sunset Boulevard moment, the way they introduce your character. So it's like, these are not the normal reference points that you see in a film like this.
It's so true. That was a Sunset Boulevard moment.
Yeah. Yeah. Was that by
Exactly.
design, or is that is that just something
That
that,
moment was so important. The moment that I'm introduced and that one line, "You're just in time."
yeah.
I th- I must have worked on that one line with a coach, Ivana Chubbuck, and she'd say to me, "That line is a very important line."
Oh,
So
it does so much in establishing your character
yeah,
through not the line, but the camera, the way that it's set up, it's the
yeah.
framing of the show. It's telling you so much about who this person is.
Exactly. No, that was really fun. I had so much fun. I mean, the first day was very nerve-wracking, but then
Mhm.
once you get into it and you know who your character is, you can start having fun with it.
Oh, of course. You have to kind of find your bearings within it. And
Yeah.
especially, I couldn't even imagine with everything that's going on, all the outside pressures of the world and shooting this in COVID, when your country is literally on lockdown, you're having to get special
I
permission
know.
to leave. Like, what an
I
insane
mean,
time to be
oh,
doing this.
it was so insane. But we were very lucky because nobody got COVID the entire time. We were all very isolated up in the woods. That's
Yeah.
why. And we were all staying at the very foot of the mountain in like a little lodge. There was no interaction with anyone except us going up into the mountains and coming back into the little lodge. And so we were lucky. None of us got COVID.
It's pretty remarkable to
Yeah,
do that. But I guess you were in your own bubble. So if
we
you
were in our
tested
bubble.
going into it, there was no way you would catch it at that point. So it makes a lot of sense. But 3 years into this, how does it feel to have this kind of out in the world almost at this point?
God, it's just I was so afraid that it wasn't going to get out in the world. I
Mm,
was so afraid. Like we did all these festivals and then the COVID and then the strike and there was just so many things going against films and having to put it on hold and thinking, oh, is it going to get cold? And but we pushed really hard and Blue Harbor came along and they were a very exciting new company that was very excited about the film. And and I've come back in from Australia and I don't know, I'm just thrilled. I'm just thrilled that we're finally going, okay, now the public will judge this film. Do you know?
absolutely. And I think it's something that they're going to respond well to this movie. This is something that
Yeah.
it's a because there's large swaths of this movie that are absolutely just character based, where you spend a lot of time establishing the world and the motivation behind these characters, and it's not something that's taken for granted. And even
Yes.
as the sort of the world and the story starts to reveal itself, you're doubling down on these longer character moments. And I think this is above all else, despite the fact that it looks great, that you have really good practical effects in this film. All the Fango moments for the horror crowd are going to enjoy it, but I think above all else, this is really a performance piece first.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. I was so important that was happening in this film to all of us. That it was different. It wasn't just getting from one gore or one slash to the
Yeah.
next. Yeah.
Well, it's all this interconnected tissue of the relationships between these women that are
Yes.
really, that's the story that you're telling here. They all had these different things that brought them to this moment, but it's how they're
Yes.
interacting with each other and how they, that's the real heart. And you could almost remove all of
Yes.
that and you would still have a story worth telling here, I think.
I know. And they were so good.
Yeah,
I
they're great.
loved that cast. I loved what they brought to those characters. Each one of them are so unique and brought so much to those characters.
Oh, absolutely. And that was something I was going to bring up was that normally in films like this, you'll see maybe there's one or two performances that you can kind of hang your hat on. You give the rest a pass, knowing that, look, they filmed this thing in 13 days. There was people that weren't
Yeah.
professional actors. You grade it on a curve to some degree, but this is not one of those films. This is something where I think there's not a performance in this film that hinders it. Everybody here is in full service of the narrative, and I think everyone does a great job with what they have.
Oh, thank you so much. Well, we were really lucky because it wasn't a big budget film, and the fact
No,
that we were able to get these actors to come and do this film, was I think a real, really because I think it was the script and the director brought them to this.
I gotta ask you: is do you get? You've done it so many times now at this point, where you have to cover your accent in performances, and you mentioned that you were working with a coach in this, is that something you still have to be thoughtful of when you're hiding your accent or, doing a different accent for a role?
Oh, you mean like my Aussie accent?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. No, totally. Like I am not even aware anymore of what accent I have because I lived in Australia for 34 years now.
Yeah.
And I am told sometimes when I'm acting, oh, that sounded a little bit Aussie. And I go, really? Like, oh my God, are you kidding me? But Mona had a very particular voice.
Mm.
There's no doubt that her voice was kind of almost, I tried to make it almost like an old-fashioned voice,
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
You
Well,
know,
that's the Sunset Boulevard thing that I was dialing
yes.
into, where it felt
So
like,
a little bit, yeah, like the diction is almost, oh, you're just in time, that sort of thing.
yeah.
It's almost like, she's in a movie and oh, look at me, that sort of thing. So I definitely think that that voice came very naturally in the character,
Oh
you
yeah,
know.
and it's something that actually does support it, where it's
Yeah,
you're having this big choice, but in the end, it's this this performative role. This voice is an affectation, but
it's
that
an
actually
affectation.
does, but it does support this character,
Yes,
that why they would
totally.
show themselves this way to the world.
I mean, I know people like that. They have created a persona of who they are in the
Hmm.
world. And they're so lost in that persona that they actually forget who they really are. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, of course. Yeah. Well, it's if you tell yourself a story or you tell a story about yourself
Yeah,
enough times, it becomes reality.
exactly.
You can't divorce yourself, and you.
And I think, in a way, that's the humor of her. There
Mhm.
is some humor in Mona in that she
Yes.
totally believes in this character that she created.
Well, the moment there's moments that are, I think, of where you go into the basement for
Yes.
the newspapers. Like, I was
Yeah.
laughing out loud at that moment. I thought it was
Yeah.
such a wonderful moment because it's tense and it's unnerving and that, but there is a just a wonderful absurdity for how big it is and just how I
Yes.
really
Yes.
adore it.
Totally. And that is so intentional.
It feels that way. It doesn't feel
Yeah.
like there's anything and there's always things that are, luck, happenstance that make into a film.
Yeah.
But this does feel like a very intentional film, kind of from top to bottom, from the way that it looks, the
Totally.
performance, and everything. It
Yeah.
doesn't feel like you accidentally landed
Yeah.
on anything here.
No, that I accidentally overacted. Yeah. No, exactly. I mean, I totally intended that big, that bigness of, I mean, I'm surprised that if Beth in that scene hadn't been so scared, she would have said, "What the fuck? What are you doing? Who are you?" You know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
she go, "What are you doing? You're acting so weird." But instead, because she was so scared, she just like didn't.
I and it's something that I think that really does draw the audience into that, because you
Yeah.
can't help but empathize with this character, and she's so deeply rooted. It gives other people the room to go bigger and to kind of have this.
Yeah,
You have like
exactly.
six different movies that are going on all at once, but it somehow all works together. But
Yeah, totally.
I know we're almost out of time here, but I got to ask one question though, because anytime I talk to somebody from Australia that ends up moving to the States or working in the States, is it possible to make it as an Australian actor without having done even a small stint on Neighbours? Is that a requirement?
Oh my God, I know what you mean. Uh, yes, I think it is. Yes, I think Nicole Kidman didn't do any stints on Neighbours, but I did a stint on Neighbours. But,
I mean, the thing has been on, how long has that show been running now?
30 years or more, maybe 40.
Oh,
I don't know
it's
how
gotta
long.
be.
I mean, that's, in Neighbors is it's kind of an interesting thing. I mean, I've done stints. I did a stint on Neighbors. I don't think it's the most soulful thing, but Margot Robbie was on there for
Yeah,
2 years. And she learned her craft on it. So, she's an exceptional actress, though. She would have been
absolutely.
no matter what she'd done, she would have been a star.
Well,
You know.
it's kind of like doing live theater, I think, where you have to show up and do the thing for extended periods of time every single day, that it's just you learn, I think, the craft in that in a way that it's a lot more difficult to get when you're doing it in these piecemeal way that we shoot film. And so when you're
Totally.
doing television or theater, I think just because you get more at bats and you have more repetitions, that you build that muscle memory that you need for acting.
Yeah. And you learn lines very quickly. You have to learn lines very
That's
quickly.
true. Soap
You know,
operas
one
are
time,
insane
here's
for
a
that.
script. Yeah, here's a script. I mean, I did 2 soap operas in New York, and we had
Hmm.
30 pictures a day sometimes. You know?
I don't know how you guys do that. There's
Yeah,
no way. My brain does not work that way. If it's
I
my
know.
own words, I can do it, but getting somebody else's words in my head, it's so difficult. So, but Jane, it was really nice to meet you. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this, and congratulations on the film. You got a special one here, so I'm excited
Oh,
for people to start seeing this.
thank you so much. Thank you. Really appreciate that.
All right, thank you, Jane. Take care.
Bye.
Bye bye.